What up, YouTube? It's DLAZ, and I promise I feel horrible for the fact that I haven't put out a YouTube video since the first video like I promised, but that is all changing today. I'm going to do my best to get content out weekly at the very least. I spent the last couple hours watching some of Ryan's vlogs from his most recent Bahamas trip, some unreleased, and I regret to inform him that he actually played halfway decent. Maybe with the pressure of it not being his money and being DNEG's money made him think a little more in every single spot. He definitely did plenty that I can make fun of and criticize, but instead, because it was overall decent enough, I just found like an interesting heuristic or spot to talk about. It has to do with turn barreling, how to pick sizing, and I'm gonna end up criticizing one of his opponents. All right, this is some unreleased content. As of today, it's unreleased. It will be coming soon, but this is an interesting hand from Ryan's 10K in the Bahamas.
Raised to 4,000. It
Let's take a look.
us in the big blind, and we have king 3 suited. We make the call, heads up to a flop. Flop comes king, queen, 4, 1 spade. Check, he bets 4K again, and we make the call.
So far, pretty standard. Ryan defends king 3 suited in the big blind. In position C bets for about 30% pot.
1K in the middle. We go to the turn. Turn comes 2 of not spade. I think it brings backdoor hearts. I don't remember. It doesn't matter for us. We check, and into the 21K, he bets meaty. He bets 16K. Now I'm ready to proceed with caution. I don't love this. I don't know. I'm getting a little shook here. But we make the call. We have top pair. He's a competent player. Everyone's really
okay. So here is where things get a little bit interesting, I would say. So the turn goes the 2. First off, you should remember the suits. If you're gonna, especially if you're a vlogger, at the very least, the suits are relatively important. Like if it's bringing backdoor hearts, not bringing backdoor hearts. If it's the deuce matching the king, that's just somewhat relevant. If it's matching the queen, that means the opponent could have top pair with a flush draw, right? Like there's important things to consider, or queen X with a flush draw. Just things that you should know. Now, less relevant when it comes to the facing this bet on the turn, but let's talk about in positions sizing. So he bets about 75% pot, which I'm sure a lot of you guys would be like, what's wrong with that? And the size from like a basic understanding is fine, but he could play better. And I'm going to play out the rest of this hand, and then I'm going to show you how he could have won way more chips and just make a more effective turn bet, and then how, picking some other random examples, how you could approach turns and how to pick what size to bet, whether to bet 75% pot, over pot, and so on. So let's run the rest of this hand. Let's watch Ryan get coolered.
really good in a 10K, obviously, generally. Heads up to the river, 53K in the middle. This pot is getting massive, and the river comes a 3. This is probably the best card we could possibly get. He has ace king a lot. He has king jack a lot, you know. He does have king queen a lot, but this is our Jing card, basically. Better than a king, if we were looking to improve it anyway. So we check, and into the 53K, he bets 42K. It's a massive bet. I'm not really scared in game. I'm pretty confident that I can call and win enough of the time that he bets so big. Maybe I'm a complete idiot, you know what I mean? Maybe people don't go for 3 meaty streets with ace king here, but I think they do. I think good players do. We make the call, and he has king queen. He was just milking us the whole time. We, thought we caught up, but we didn't.
So yeah, Ryan gets scammed, obviously. The river is a good card. I personally disagree. I think a king would have been a better card because it reduces the chances that he has a dominating king like king queen or king jack. But the 3 also, now how I would think about this in game is like, now I have to pay river. However, I'm confused why Ryan's so concerned, like thinking it's such a big bet. I understand it's a big bet relative to like the amount of chips that he has, but to the pot size, it's less than pot. For in position though sake, I feel he basically got the minimum, and he could have extracted more value if he was playing a more proper turn barreling strategy. I'm going to kind of talk about how to identify how this turn should be approached with a more efficient betting strategy in this video today. And I'm going to start off with this hand and go from there. So let's move on to the solver, GTO wizard. All right, guys. So in general, I recommend using a one-size betting strategy when studying, mainly because it's a much easier strategy to implement in game. It's also easier to pull very basic ideas and heuristics and come up with like an ABC sort of strategy based on if X happens, then Y, and use that size. You'll see what I mean a little bit more here in a moment. So Ryan's opponent size stuck out to me right away as being way too small, and you can see the solver agrees. When the turn is a total brick where no straights come in, the nuts don't change, the strong hands on the flop are still top tier strength hands on the turn, that is usually a green light to blast away. The main reason for that is we're not betting into a range that's going to have a ton of strong or nutted hands or a nut advantage. Straights don't come in, flushes don't come in. So our strong hands just want to pile money into the pot. The reason it uses 171% pot here, you can use 1.5x to make it a little simpler, but the idea is you want to bet a geometric sizing, a sizing that you can bet really, really big on the turn, but also then use that same percentage and be all in on the river. So if we bet 170% on the turn, we get called, fold, we would have 170% behind compared to the pot on the river. So that's where that solver picks this random size from. But the main idea is that this turn card is a green light or a go ahead to use a much larger size. Think about all the hands that the big blind or Ryan would have here that are always going to call turn and never call river. Would include hands like, middling weak king X or top pairs. You can see Ryan was considering folding 2 pairs, so he's most likely always going to fold top pair on the river facing turn bet and a river bet. And if the guy bets really large on the turn, Ryan's not going to fold turn. He can claim he is, but he's not, and most opponents aren't. There's also going to be hands like queen X with a flush draw. If Ryan was accurate saying that the turn's a 2 of hearts here, they could have queen X of hearts, 4X of hearts, combo draws like jack 9 suited, jack 10 suited. We make all of these hands uncomfortable and have to make a decision on the turn, and a lot of them, for the most part, are going to feel obligated to always call the turn and always fold the river unimproved. We're also going to maximize the 9 equity, so we're going to have less bad beat stories for our friends. The ace high flush draws, the ace jacks, the ace 10s, which are combo draws, flush draws, the jack 10s, jack 9s, the straight draws, and so on, are going to feel the max amount of pressure. 75% pot, they have an easy decision. 170% pot, it's no longer an easy decision. Now, we're also going to not always have strong hands here on the turn. We're going to actually way more often have airballs, bluffs, non-equity hands like 8-7 suited, 7-6 suited, 6-5 suited, ace-8 suited, ace-7, ace-6, ace-5, right? We're going to have all these hands that are virtually little equity or no equity that are going to benefit much more from the bigger size. If we bet 75% pot, the big blind should always call a queen on the turn. But when we bet 171% pot, they're going to always fold a queen. I don't even think they're going to call nearly as much as the solver is indicating here. And therefore, when we don't have it, we're going to maximize folds from better hands. We're also going to get better flush draws to fold when we have a hand like 6-5 of hearts and so on. So we just accomplish a lot more by betting this big size. I know some of you are going to say, but wait, when we have strong hands like king queen and we're getting a queen to fold, isn't that a bad thing? Yes, in a vacuum, we know that he has a queen, right? Then we would obviously want to bet small, but you have to think about zooming out. By betting 170% pot here, let's say we just bet 2x what he bets on the turn. That means every time we get called, if we bet 150% pot, we're making twice as many chips. For all the hands, which there are a lot of, that call turn and always fold the river versus that would call turn to our 75% pot bet size and now fold river, we're going to make more in the long term. We're also going to deny more equity, and then when we don't have it, we're going to generate more folds and win more chips. So just as an overall solid strategy, we're going to make much more. We're going to be way happier come river because we're going to deny equity at a much more efficient rate and therefore just win more chips overall and get sucked out on less and so on. Now, there are some basic, very easy heuristics where you can identify when to use an overpot sizing. The other options I generally play, the strategy I play is either overpot, pot, or between 65 to 75% pot. And there's very clear turns that would give you a clear indication of which size the solver would want to play in these spots. And I'm going to show you some really easy examples and some easy things to remember with a couple of different flop boards. So let's take a look. Here's the first example. We got queen 7-4 rainbow, and this is a really good board to show exactly how to identify what size the barrel on the turn. Now, just to show you the flop sizing, you can see it's a range bet B40, and your flop size is going to obviously have an impact on what your turn geometric sizing would be when you're going to want to use a geometric sizing. That's not so important. You just want to know if you should use overpot, pot, or underpot, right? There's going to be a multitude of different turn cards that can come off here. We can either get a total brick where the strong hands on the flop are still for the most part going to be very strong hands on the turn, like over pairs and top pairs would still be considered, a top tier value hand. And then there's going to be obvious draw completing turns where the most obvious draw 5-6 comes in like an 8 or a 3. And then there's going to be turns that are going to bring in multiple straights for our opponent. So like where an 8 or a 3 just 5-6 improves to a straight, it could be either a 6 or a 5, where the big blind is going to have 6-3 suited, 8-6, 8-5, 5-3 suited, right? So there's 3 different types of turns where multiple draws come in, multiple straights come in, one straight comes in, or no straights come in. And that's basically the premise of what we want to identify to then decide our bet sizing. So if the turn is a total brick, like a jack, for example, even with or without a flush draw, our size is going to be the geometric sizing. And you can see the solver automatically, the AI solver on GTO Wizard, generates 152% pot sizing, which is the geometric turn barrel sizing. If the turn brings in the most obvious single straight draw that's out there, 5-6, like 8, you can see now the size is going to be pot. So when it's total brick, it's over pot. When only one straight comes in, you're going to use pot and check. Now there's reasons for this, but I'm just trying to show you how to identify which size to use. For the most part, that's the main takeaway I want you guys to have here. And then when multiple straights come in, so if the turn is a 6 or a 5, now is when is going to be the only time, or for the most part in context of these sort of textures, is going to be the time that you're going to want to use under pot. It's also going to be a time where the big blind's going going to play leads. That's another video for another day, but you can see the solver is spitting out a size of 67% pot, and it would be the same thing for a5. Now, it would be the same thing if the turn brings back their flush draws and so on, because it's just about how many straight draws the big blind can have. If they can have multiple straight draws, it's going to be 67% pot. If they only have one straight draw, we're going to use pot. If they have no straight draws, or it's a total brick like we saw with the jack, or we can see with a deuce, doesn't really matter whether it's above the 7 or below the 7, the size is going to be 1.52x pot. I'm going to show you one more example here in a second. Okay, so we have jack 10 deuce. This is another good board to show exactly this heuristic or basic idea of how to identify turn barrel sizing. So jack 10 deuce, pretty good board for the opener in early position. Going to have a lot of high equity hands, and it's going to want to use this 40% range bet. So every hand wants to bet 40% pot on the flop. Big blind calls because we're assuming we're getting to the turn. So there's three different types of turns here. We can get a 3, 4, 5, or 6 where nothing changes. We can get a 7 where straights come in. There's obviously other cards like an ace and queen and king where straights come in, and then we can get a 8 where multiple straights come in, like queen 9, 9, 7, 8, 7 on a 7, and then a total brick like a 3 or a 4. So let's first take a look at a 7. We know when one straight comes in, strategy is going to be pot and check. So we should expect to see the solver to spit out 100% as the turn bet sizing. And you can see again, it's using 100% pot or pot size bet on the turn here because just one straight comes in. Now if the turn's an 8 where two straights come in, 9, 7, queen 9 being the obvious straights here, you can see again, it's going to have us do a bunch of leading, which is interesting, and that has to do with the offsuit combos that the big blind has that under the gun doesn't even have. Suited 9, 7, for example, is 67% pot because again, two straights come in. And then lastly, when we get a turn that Ryan's opponent saw in the king queen forehand, like a 4, and we can do with the flush draw, actually, why not? Just kind of doing this on the fly. But the size now is going to be 1.52x pot, which is the geometric sizing. So some basic ideas: identify how many straights come in on the turn or how many draws complete on the turn. Then you can determine your bet size. So if multiple straights come in on the turn, then you're going to use a less than pot size. Whatever that size is for your strategy is fine. Whether it's 67, 75, doesn't matter. If one straight comes in like 8, 9 on this texture, it's going to be pot. If nothing comes in, you want to use over pot, whether it's geometric like 1.5x pot or 1.25x pot. Doesn't really matter all that much. It's just the idea is you want to try to maximize the amount of chips you're going to make. You want to deny the most amount of equity, and you also, on the flip side, when straights do come in, you don't want to put too many chips into a range that's going to have an advantage on you, where you're just going to get ravaged on later streets and end up just losing way too many unnecessary chips. I hope you guys took something away from this. I hope you enjoyed this sort of content. Let me know if there's other strategies you want me to discuss, other things you want me to do. Comment below, but don't leave yet because I got a little something for you guys here at the end. Now, I couldn't do a video on hands that Ryan played without making fun of him, at least for one of the several hands that he still played really poorly.
We raised to 4,000.
Here's the first
big
one.
blind calls. Heads up to a flop. Becomes jack 7, 4. 2 clubs, 1 heart. He checks and we check back. I probably could bet here, but it felt...
I probably could bet here. Dude, it's a fucking range bet. You should always bet here. Not probably.
a little... I don't know what the fuck is making me make decisions.
No one knows why he makes half the decisions he makes. I mean, look at him. He's wearing a snow hat inside while recording, telling his hand history. The guy's got a few screws loose.
I remember what I was thinking.
But that's not even the worst part of the
hand. We
hand.
have enough equity that I don't want to have to fold to a check raise with king queen, so whatever. It's not quite good enough to value bet. Turn comes the 8 of whatever. He leads 11K. And I say, you know what?
He says, you know what? The guy bets over pot. This sucks. I probably should have just bet the flop and I fold. No, that's not what he does.
You want to overbet the pot? He's betting more than the size of the pot. You want to do some slick European stuff? I'm not having it. I just jam.
And he just jams. Now, to find out the result of the hand, you're going to have to watch his vlog that's coming up soon. Otherwise, this is DLAZ. We outie. Also, follow my kick.com/teamrdp. Ryan and I are both now working with Coin Poker. Sign up there, code RDP. We just had our first free roll the other night for RDP users. It was a $5,000 free roll. First place was like $900. We put bounties on Ryan's head, my head. Some other guest stars appeared. It was a lot of fun. We both streamed it. So sign up now, Coin Poker. Also, the link below for GTO Wizard. If you sign up with our code RDP as well, you will get 10% off. So take advantage of that. And yeah, I'm out. Keep an eye out for more videos in the future. Peace.
He's still not over the main event bust. You know what I'm doing.